This is from the website thewaythetruthandthelife.net.
As a youth, with nothing but the shirt on my back, I crossed the country a couple of times and discovered why Jesus told his true servants to go with nothing but the shirt on their back. It is Sunday evening, December 26th. I'm in Florida. Olga stayed in Russia to help with our granddaughter Darina and to help her folks. Her father is totally disabled now, living with a nephew. At any rate, I wanted to share my testimony that I gave in meeting today. It has to do with why I understand something about what Jesus said in Luke chapter 10 when he sent his 70 servants out 2 by 2 to take nothing for their journey. And he asked us to pray for more laborers for the harvest. I have a background that gives me some insight that is my testimony. First of all, as a worker said in Freedom New York Convention some years ago, the description of a thing is not the thing. You can write the description of corn on a piece of paper and put it in the ground, it will not grow. The writing in the Bible is a description of what people heard and saw. What we hear is a description. And Paul on Mars Hill in Luke chapter 17, verse 28 says about God, "In him we live and move and have our being." The reality of getting close to God is being able to see ourselves as part of him and see his laws working and draw close to him. And our capacity to love has a lot to do with that. That's another testimony, but regarding the insight into Jesus' instructions to his 2 by 2 servants to take nothing extra for their journey, essentially to go with the shirt on their back. My background that gives me insight. When I was 11, my father was killed in an accident. 2 years later, my mother remarried and moved from our farm town to the city with my stepfather. The summer I was 14, I left and came back to my hometown and stayed with friends and worked on a farm. Towards the end of summer, Jimmy Reynolds and I hitchhiked to Chanute Field, Illinois, to see Roger Chaplin, who was in the Air Force. In a small town, the age group of friends is a little bit wider, and we had gone to a 2-room schoolhouse where there were 6 grades in one classroom. So the friendship had a wider age range for my childhood than many today, where they're grouped by age and grade. At any rate, experienced many things hitchhiking with Jimmy Reynolds. And I went home to Buffalo, New York, right on the outskirts, and back to school that September. And the following summer, when I was 15, I did the same thing. I went and stayed at Frank Clough's and worked at Hoover's Dairy. Towards the end of the summer, I saw in the Niagara Falls Gazette a Marine advertising $20 for a ride to Tombstone, Arizona. And Roger Chaplin, my friend in the Air Force, was stationed at Davis-Monthan Air Base in Tucson, Arizona. So I bought the ride to Tombstone, Arizona, and hitchhiked from there. Visited with Roger, and then hitchhiked back. Got a ride that took me to Juarez, Mexico. A man and two others besides myself that he had picked up. Just an aside, he had a Pepsi-Cola distributing company, he said, but he was having trouble and was divorcing his wife and was just going for a long ride for the weekend. At any rate, there were four of us, and we had a night in Juarez and then slept in the car. And we come back, and I went on with other rides and down into Houston. But a very interesting part of that trip was when I was left off in the desert, in the middle of the desert, and picked some pear cactus and the pears and put them in my pocket. Big mistake. They festered there for weeks, the little thistles. But alone and lonely on the desert there was a fork in the road where a man had left me off. And I had a New Testament with me that a friend had. Father was a caretaker at the Council of Churches in Buffalo, had given me a New Testament, pocket New Testament. But reading, and I thought about God in heaven, my Father being dead, and I felt the closeness that my Father might be in heaven. And I believe that's helped me to draw close to God in many ways, a sense of love. At any rate, I had many experiences hitchhiking. I came home, went to high school. I had just finished 9th grade in junior high, went to high school for 2 weeks, turned 16 and left school. Started working for a living, and later, after Christmas, I went on the road selling magazines door to door, and hitchhiked back from Illinois once, and then went on the road again with another crew out to going to a different city every week. And went as far as Denver, and then hitchhiked back with a friend from Calvin Stapleton. Well, in the process of going with money and without money, I had experienced two different worlds, and this is what gives me the insight. When I had nothing but the shirt on my back, I met different worlds. not wanting anything from anybody, not begging anything. I would pick up bottles along the road and turn them in. You could get 2 cents a bottle in those days, and that was enough for what I really needed as I walked along the road. But many people were very kind. Truck drivers could offer me a place to sleep in the back of the truck, moving vans with their blankets. They'd ask me if I had eaten, buy a meal. I had some people invite me to their home. Man was in Kansas, and I was selling magazines. His wife invited me to come back for supper. He worked in an aircraft factory there, and offered to give me a place to stay and help me get a work job, and I could then get my own apartment. But I had a forged birth certificate. I was only 16, so I couldn't really consider that. The basic idea is I met a soft human nature that was caring and Christ-like, childlike. I don't mean everybody. I mean when I went with nothing but the shirt on my back. I had offers to do things that were evil and corrupting. Homosexuals, young guys on the road wanting a partner for some criminal activity, burglarizing or something. And I just simply said, no, it's against my religion, and they left me alone. When I went with money in my pocket, selling, I met a different world. And this is what gives me the insight into Jesus telling his servants to go 2 by 2. That they could meet this spirit of a child. And now Olga and I have been living in Russia spring and fall for the last 9 years. And we shared the gospel with people. We shared the gospel of Luke chapter 10, that the Lord had servants that gave up all and went 2 by 2. And that same spirit of a child was there. A neighbor, Luba's mother, offered her apartment when the first 2 workers came to be there for a few days. It was Teo and can't remember the other man's name. He's overseer in Greece now. But they had come from Armenia and were on their way to Moscow. Luba, a neighbor's mother, gave them her apartment for the time they were there. Then the next time, Arnie Floss came, and he stayed with at Luba's. Luba is a widow. Her mother has her own apartment, but lives with Luba instead. Most of the time, anyway. Well, they really enjoyed Arnie and wanted him back. He was only there for part of a week, but after he had left, there were women coming to the door that he had spoken to on the street looking for him. They wanted to know more about the Bible. After that, Olga and I got an apartment, a place where workers could stay. But, and they've used it. They've used it mainly for storage, because they like to get a batch. Only one other time did a worker stay was last year. Chinook was there for the fall until January, and stayed with Olga's mother. But Olga's mother offered a home and problems with registration to help. Olga's father had offered his home. They had separate front and back apartments in the same home. Although now Olga's father has given the apartment to a nephew and lives with the nephew. But Olga's daughter would have a home that they could use. And my point is that going with nothing but the shirt on their back would be an invitation, and the thought of it opens homes. And basically that was my testimony. There's another testimony after that, but I'll leave that for another time. I hope that this has some value to you, especially that in God we live and move and have our being. There are no laws outside of God's laws. This was not part of my testimony, but I'll say it with closing. Mercy is understanding God's laws. When we ask for mercy, yes, there are psychological effects. If we think it's good for us, it tends to be good for us. But there's also the hard reality of God's laws that we are violating, or that we've been violated and corrupted. And the closer we can draw to God and respect His laws, that's our mercy. The mercy is that we can get to know more about God and His healing. The healing of being in compliance with His laws, whether they be physical or chemical or biological or psychological or cultural. God has laws, and when they're respected, there's a maximization of some potential for intelligent existence. And we, in this reality, we live and move and have our being and have an opportunity to take the gifts of life that we have and make the most of it. I thank you.
The Gypsies discovered the secret of going with nothing when they escaped the Islamic invasion of India 1,000 years ago.
This is the ending message. This is the website, The Way, the Truth, and the Life. These are the guest rooms in our 3 homes, New York, Florida, and Russia. They are prepared for those messengers that Jesus prayed for in Luke chapter 10. And He gave them the instructions. Reading from Luke chapter 10, verse 1. After these things the Lord appointed 70 other also, and sent them 2 by 2 before His face into every city and place whither He Himself would come. As Jesus said in Matthew chapter 18, verse 20, where 2 or 3 are gathered in my name, I am with them. Verse 2, therefore He said unto them, the harvest is great, but the laborers are few. Pray ye therefore the Lord of the harvest that He would send forth laborers into the harvest. This is Jesus praying for more servants and asking us to do the same. Verse 3, Go your ways. Behold, I send you forth as lambs among wolves. Verse 4, carry neither purse nor scrip, nor shoes, and salute no man on the way. Verse 5, and into whatsoever house ye enter, first say, Peace be to this house. Verse 6, and if the Son of Peace be there, your peace shall rest upon it. If not, it shall return unto you again. Verse 7, and in the same house remain, eating and drinking such things as they give, for the laborer is worthy of his hire. Go not from house to house. Verse 8, and into whatsoever city ye enter, and they receive you, eat such things as they set before you. Verse 9, and heal the sick that are therein, and say to them, the kingdom of God has come nigh unto you. Verse 10, but into whatsoever city ye enter, and they receive you not, go your way out into the streets of the same, and say, verse 11, even the very dust of your city, which cleaves on us, we wipe off against you. Notwithstanding, be ye sure of this, that the kingdom of God has come nigh unto you. Verse 12, but I say unto you, it shall be more tolerable in that day for Sodom than for that city. In closing, remember Matthew 18, verse 20, where Jesus said, for where 2 or 3 are gathered together in my name, there I am in the midst of them.